continue. I'm sorry.
Yeah.
I just feel strong
and
about
by
that.
the way, you mentioned the book that I published, Temple at the Center of Time. And that book, David was not able to do media when it first came out. I got him on Coast to Coast, and immediately afterward he went off grid, as you know, for reasons we won't explain. But for his own personal reasons, he wasn't available to do media. But that book still, that first year, became a best-selling book. And David had come to me several years ago talking about how he thought he found something, and he did. And if anybody reads Temple at the Center of Time, they'll get it. It was unprecedented. As always, it was groundbreaking. It was brand new. It was David Flynn, right? He was going to be speaking at a conference, and he was worried. I won't mention who he was speaking at a conference with, but he was worried because they wanted the information, and he was afraid that once again they were going to steal it and put it in their book and not give him credit. And I said, well, David, then why don't you just let me publish it? I'll put your name on it. You get credit for it. You get paid royalties, and so we did. You did the same thing with his groundbreaking book on Cydonia, the monuments of Mars. Now, what we want people to know is that if they don't know it already, David Flynn passed away a few months ago. He had a brain tumor. He did the whole surgery and radiation and whatever therapies they recommended for it, but it got the best of him, and God is always in control, and David Flynn tonight is in a better place visiting with probably
with Daniel. You're saying, Daniel, here it is, my brother.
Yeah.
I'm not kidding, by the way. I really
right.
believe that.
Yeah. He's probably explaining some things to Daniel, sure. But what we want people to know is you published his book, Cydonia. I published his book, Temple at the Center of Time. He also wrote some articles. He did all these amazing video presentations where he was ahead of the curve. And we decided, ladies and gentlemen, that myself and Steve Quayle, we're going to publish a new book called, and this is just a working title. I don't know what the final title is going to be, but it's going to be called something like The Complete Works of David Flynn. And for all those people out there that have been trying to get a copy of Cydonia, and you see that thing over there on eBay or whatever selling for $1,000, it's going to have that book. It's going to have Temple at the Center of Time. It's going to have articles that were published by David Flynn. Some of those articles where David Flynn was the guy, by the way, that came up with and it's still in a 2005 Raiders News Update article. He was the one who came up with the connection between Roswell, the UFO crash site, Mount Herman, and the year 2012, and how all of that aligns geographically, which has been ripped off by an awful lot of other people who have published it in their works as if they were the originator of it. But David Flynn published the original article. In fact, the year that he wrote that for Raiders News Update, I got it published in UFO Magazine and several other magazines, and people were just amazed that nobody before David Flynn had seen this. But that's the way David Flynn was. It was, in fact, I want to tell you something, Steve. I had often said in private conversations to my wife, Nita, I said, David, he sees the world in a way that nobody else does. And it kind of reminded me of that movie, I can't remember the actor's name, but that movie where the guy had a brain tumor. And he was able to see into other dimensions because the tumor was putting pressure on a particular part of the brain that then allowed him to be able to see things other people couldn't see. And what's strange is I had always said to my wife privately, I said, there's something very strange about David. He sees what nobody else sees. And when he publishes it, it's always way beyond what the rest of us can imagine. And yet he's so humble that he doesn't make an issue about people stealing his work and reporting it to be their own. He just does what he does. And then when we found out that David had a tumor on his brain, I told my wife, I said, I told you, I've always thought that there's something, somehow, God made this marvelous human, and there is somehow, some way, something that is allowing a particular part of his brain to see the world in terms of measurements and mathematics and whatever that the rest of us can't imagine. Well, that was God's gift to us, was David Flynn and his wonderful work. And Steve Quayle and I are going to publish a book. It's going to be out fairly soon, within a couple of months or so, called The Complete Works of David Flynn. It's going to have all the books he wrote. It's going to have articles he wrote. And then we're going to provide free to you, if we can get access to them, free to you, his presentations at Roswell, other places where he appeared with Richard Hoagland and other places. Anything we can get our hands on, then we're going to make that available to you too.
So we want something too, Tom. I think people need to understand this. And I've been on talk radio for 20 years. I've interviewed the smartest men, but I will say this, and when I say something, you've basically defined it. His ability to think, see, and draw conclusions. By the way, David has a twin brother, and I want everybody to pray for him. His name is Mark. This is really hard. When twins lose, and they were identical twins, or forgive me, are identical twins, Mark is brilliant. I'm not saying that to flatter him, but I know this, I know that Mark has a work to do. Mark's probably the only guy, and I'm saying this, I can't understand David. I think he would be so gracious to me and walk me through it and stuff. But I'm just telling you, we need to pray for Mark. That's David Flynn's brother, because he is going to carry on. I said, my friend, the one shoe, the right shoe, is now gone. Now you have to take up the left shoe. No, difference in the shoes. But the point is, and he knows it. So there's only one person I know, and I've met them both, and I want to say this: Mark is the co-equivalent genius of his brother. I'm just telling you,
wonderful.
Point blank.
And Mark I think he has agreed, has he not? He's
yes.
going to write an introduction to this work.
Yep.
Mark has been sending us pictures. I asked Mark, and you asked Mark, to give us all kinds of pictures of David Flynn. I'm hoping to even get pictures of when he was a youth. So people know this. The book will be published. It'll have Temple at the Center of Time in it. In the middle of the book, it'll have an area where there's going to be many pages of images, pictures of David with captions. It's also going to have the book Sidonia, and then it's going to have these other works that David wrote that we're going to publish and make sure he gets credit for.
Absolutely. Now,
people need to know this. We continue to pay royalties on this work to David's successors. Steve Quayle and I, ladies and gentlemen, are also going to make sure that a substantial portion of the sale of every book goes to supporting David Flynn's children. We're talking about other things we haven't yet worked out the details on, but we're talking about setting up a memorial fund. And we want to do this in tandem with the family's wishes. For instance, if providing revenue from the sale of this book to his children is the family's wishes, then we're going to do that. If the family tells us they want it to go to brain cancer research, we're going to do that, whatever it is. But we're going to make you aware of what we're doing and let you know that you will finally be able to get your hands on copies of his research that you've been emailing me by the thousands of people about, emailing Steve by the thousands of people about, wanting to know where in the world you can get this stuff without having to pay $1,000 for a book at eBay. We're going to make it all available to you, very affordable. But in addition to that, part of why we're selling the book itself, other than the fact we have to keep from going bankrupt, is we want to establish a memorial fund in David's memory. And we want revenue to be able to flow into all of the above, helping his kids, supporting brain research. And so we'll be making you, Steve Quayle at stevequayle.com, Tom Horn at RaidersNewsUpdate.com. In the weeks following, you will see advertising for this. And we're going to make you available of how you can get your hands on that research you've been asking for, but also know that when you buy those books, there's a very substantial portion of that that's going to be going to these charitable funds in David Flynn's memory. And so we think this is a very inspired idea, and we're happy to do it.
Well, Tom, again, let's now go into the Vatican. How do you see the Black Pope, Petrus Romanus, final Pope? How do you see him fitting in with the alien thing? I mean, I have my take. I don't have the scholarship to back it up. It's just the, if you will, how it's been playing out. Most people don't understand. Here, and ladies and gentlemen, those of you who are Catholics, those of you who are Protestants, you want to know who the Luciferians are? The ones that are changing the classic basis and foundation of faith to include aliens, and who are claiming that the Word of God is not the inspired Word of God. In other words, when you see that, and you see those statements coming out of cardinals and whoever else, you know, is out there, you're going to be able to have discernment. So those of you who are the Catholic brethren, you need to pray for discernment, because there's going to be and this is prophecy, and this is a thus saith the Lord, the battle that is coming into the Catholic Church is unparalleled. And I'm not talking verbal, it's going to be a battle, and I'm talking a battle unto death, because the thing, Tom, is that this whole alien thing is being slipped in, and obviously the Luciferians can't wait for, let's just say this, Lucifer's Siamese twin to come on the scene. And so I think it's really important that people get this message. So please, would you cover that? It's really critical.
All right, let me do something as fast as I possibly can. First of all, tie this into what's happening in Rome right now, and then tie it into the whole alien agenda. And of course, if Chris has things that he wants to add, just you got to remember that when me and Steve get on a roll, you basically have to just jump in, thump us in the head, and say, "I have something to say." So, first of all, in research to determine who among the cardinals is most papable, which of the contenders in Rome right now is most likely to take the throne of St. Peter, so-called, following Pope Benedict XVI, nothing becomes more intriguing than how at the center of all of that is a cover-up involving the third secret of Fatima. This is found in the most likely candidates, I believe, in Petrus Romanus. And I want to make this point as quickly as I can, and then I'm going to move to the alien side. Can I do it that way, Steve?
Yep.
Okay. So first of all, Peter the Roman. Who is that going to be? Well, you have some Catholic prophets telling us it's going to be Cardinal Arends. That's Ronald L. Conti Jr. You have some who's telling us it's going to be Peter Turkson, the African cardinal. And if you had asked me just 60 days ago, I would have said, without doubt, that Peter the Roman is going to be Cardinal Tarcisio Peter Bertone. He was born in Romano, which means the Roman. His second name is Peter. He was born in Canterbury. He's Peter the Roman. And among other things, Cardinal Bertone is, at the time that our book is heading to the typesetter, it's with the typesetter right now, he's second in command at the Vatican. And he's the Secretary of State. The Pope's Carmelingo also, which is Italian for Chamberlain, which means that he will be responsible during a papal vacancy to serve as the acting head of state of the Vatican City until the time of agreement, the election of a new pope. And part of our investigation into Bertone includes background into a 2007 book that he wrote called The Last Seer of Fatima. And the reason why this is important is because it appears to have accomplished exactly the opposite of its primary objective, and that is mainly to refute another work by a famous Italian media personality, a journalist, an author by the name of Antonio Socchi, whose manuscript, The Fourth Secret of Fatima, claims that Rome, the Holy See, the Vatican, has been suppressing information concerning the true secret that was allegedly delivered to those, kids there in Fatima in 1917. I want people to maybe go to Google and Google this for themselves. I apologize, I'm being interrupted here. In his uncharacteristically explosive response to Cardinal Bertone, people can Google this title, Dear Cardinal Bertone, who, between you and me, is deliberately lying? And they will discover how, after significant time and investigation, this Mr. Socchi concluded that the Vatican had withheld an important part of the Fatima revelation during its celebrated press conference in 2000, the release of the message of Fatima. Now, what does that have to do with anything? Well, Socchi describes in the introduction to his book how he used to believe, like most Catholics probably still do, that the Vatican's official version of the Fatima message had been released in 2000. I apologize. I'm getting totally interrupted here. The vision of Fatima was reportedly released in the year 2000. At that time, it had been prepared by who? Cardinal Ratzinger, who is now the current Pope Benedict XVI, and Monsignor Tarcisio Bertone. I have no idea what I'm listening to.
We're getting a little bit of background probably from one of people on Skype. We'll just make sure we've got everybody here. Chris?
I'm here.
On Skype. Steve, are you back?
Yeah, I'm back on Skype.
Okay, we got Steve reestablished. It's just extra sensitive. We can hear you type on the keyboard. You're coming through loud and clear, Tom. Keep going.
Okay. Okay. In any case, the release to the public claimed to be the final secret in the year 2000. The investigator from Italy, from Rome, Socchi, he had come across an article by an Italian journalist by the name of Vito Messori, and some other stuff. What their work had caused him to do was to begin to question whether or not, in fact, Rome had released the final secret of Fatima. And what he did was he started a investigative research. Now, keep in mind, this is one of the most renowned media personalities in Rome. He's a Catholic. But he began a probe focusing on the biggest question of them all, and that was a portion of Lucy, the last living young person from Fatima who had received these revelations, had a portion of her document which contained the principal words of the so-called Blessed Virgin Mother concerning end-time conditions at Rome, and even perhaps the coming of Petrus Romanus. Was that being withheld from public view by the Vatican due to its potentially explosive content? And what happened was Socchi's suspicions deepened after he started, requesting interviews with Cardinal Bertone, who had been an acquaintance of his in the past. In fact, Bertone had invited him to speak at various conferences before he had his position as Secretary of State. But now, all of a sudden, Bertone wouldn't answer his inquiries. And what happened was, over a period of time, bottom line is, Socchi was left convinced that there are two sets of the Fatima secret. One that the public has seen, which was published in 2000, but another which, for reasons as yet at least mostly unknown, the Vatican is keeping buried. And at the beginning of that plot was a description of the third secret that was given by Cardinal Angelo Sodano, who is now the power, if you will, in Rome, whose supporters are putting out these poison pen letters to try to undergird, or try to, whatever the word is.
Undermine,
the position of Cardinal Bertone and his possibility of becoming Petrus Romanus. And what what Sodano had done in 2000, he gave a speech during the June 2000 message of Fatima. There was a whole 2 weeks of events going on in Fatima. Pope John Paul II spoke there, but Sodano gave a speech. And if you've read the Vision of Fatima, there's a portion of it that talks about a bishop that's clothed in white. And he's walking through a city, Steve, that is almost entirely destroyed. He's climbing over the bodies of dead religious people. There's evidently been, according to this vision, a large number of people in St. Peter's Square for some reason. It sounds actually like a conclave, and he's climbing over their dead bodies. They're all dead. Bishops are dead. Religious people are all dead. And he's trying to get to a large cross. This might be the cross that's on the top of the obelisk there in the middle of St. Peter's Square, which we could also talk about what that all means. But he kneels down, and then terrorists come out and they shoot him and they kill him. That's what the prophecy of Fatima is